I would think it's like language, like children learning language. And you know how limited a child may be and how his vocabulary starts growing as he has experiences. I think it's the same. Because this is a vocabulary. There's also a language of symbols that we use in art and many other fields. And it grows as your experiences grow. It's amazing how one object can symbolize so many things and so many different things. So I think it started when I started painting. It had started before then, but to really see the symbol itself, it started when we began painting, and as the life became more complex and as the demands became greater, then the symbolism became more complex and became greater. So an experience from the intellectual study in school, and then you had the practical experiences of life, and then to visit foreign countries and meet so-called foreign people, and to see new horizons and yet see the same symbols that can speak. I think this is what happened. And over the years, I've been fortunate that some of the same symbols I started with, but they have taken on other meanings. And I feel that I'm fortunate for that, rather than have to find a whole new set. This was built by Paul Biggers. That was my daddy. And across the street, his twin brother, Sandy, had a house. So these two Biggers brothers came to Gastonia and settled. My daddy was one-legged. He had a crutch. But we didn't realize that he was handicapped, because he utilized that so well that we didn't even realize that he was handicapped. And but that was a part of his nature, was this crutch. This was a part of his character. And he played ball, and he could run from base to base with that crutch in one leg. And in many ways, he could outdo men who had all their limbs. He taught us all to read before we went to school. We learned to read, and we all read from his huge Bible. And I can remember standing beside him with the Bible on a special stand, and each day I would read something from the Bible with him. This was Mama's house, really. Papa built this house for her, and she was queen in this house. And even though he was a very strong man, strong-willed man, he played second fiddle in the house, because this was Mama's. And she was a woman also who was very strong-willed. She always was teaching us obedience, to be thorough in everything we did. Being the last child, or what they call the baby, I spent a great deal of time with Mama. And so when everybody else had gone off to school or wherever, I was here to help Mama do her domestic chores. So I learned to sweep, mop, even a little things like a small cake, a biscuit or two. I learned to bake these kind of little things. She would have time to say, you do this, learn to do this, you see? And also it was the same thing with sewing and then quilting. All of these things I started acquiring because I was with her. And during the days that when she really became a washwoman, washing not only a big family's clothes, but she took in washings from across the track over there, and preparing for her day's washing. was part of my job as a kid. So all of this I helped my mama do. I worked with her in doing this for years. Even when I was in the 5th and 6th grade, I still helped her do these things. But mama was, well, she was a very sweet mother. And I don't have anything but fond memories of her and her papa both. I don't have any bad memories of them because their sternness, their making us have discipline has followed me all my days. When I go into my studio now, and that's the reason why I can go every day, and this is not easy to do. But I look forward to the next day's work. And as I work from 4 to 12 hours a day in painting and drawing, I always reflect upon her and Papa because they demanded that of us. They demanded that you work your can off. It was a sin to be lazy. It was a sin to tell a lie. It was a sin to make an excuse. And I can remember her as well as Papa said, there's no such thing as can't. When we say, Mama, I can't find this, Mama, I can't, there's no such word as can't. They said that often to us. Now you just get busy and go find it. Or you get busy and go do this.
And there's this little old baby. And I said, I've got enough to do without taking care of another baby. And Mama called me. She said, you remember our talks? She said, you're not acting like a little lady. She said, you're acting too fresh and too smart. I said, now, this is your little brother, and you're to love him. And of course, you know, you ended up with me taking care of him. And he grew to be the cutest little baby. He was brown, had this ringlets, just ringlets of brown hair, and was smart. He'd try to help do all the things. And then as he grew older, he always managed to make us laugh, and he could sing, and he'd shout, and he would preach. When he got big enough that he had to go to the toilet outside, he'd stand up over the stool part and preach, be out there preaching for about an hour. I said, where's John? What is he preaching about? And we'd go out there and get him, and he'd have off all his clothes.
My oldest brother, Sylvester, and then my next brother, Jim Biggers, and then brother that was next to me, there were 3 girls in our family, Joe Biggers, they all could draw. And this was encouraged by Papa and Mama. But by the time I came along, I was the last child, the 7th child, and my older brothers were already entering their teens when I was born. Therefore, their drawing skills and their craft skills and all these things had developed. And I know that their work with crafts, with drawing, most of the drawing was copy. They were copying. But I saw them do this. I can't remember when they were not doing this. So eventually, when I was in an art class, a formal art class at Hampton University, I also thought about I would go back in my memory of this. And so that was not a mystery about drawing. No, that was no mystery. This house in the summertime, our windows would be open, our doors would be open, so you could hear in the night. You could hear things all over the neighborhood. And over toward Prior Street, which is maybe 10 blocks southwest of here, there was a house over there where they had parties. And they had a piano that had about 12 keys that were flat. But that did not matter. That music, when they would start, and you could hear the dude who was playing the piano, and we could imagine this, you know, he was playing the piano and you could hear his feet, you know. the pedals were gone, but those feet hit the floor, you know what I mean? And then you would hear the people slow dragging, you know? And Mama would say, "You children go to sleep." Because, you know, we'd get to humming and going on. And, you know, see, this would be maybe 12 o'clock at night. But on a Saturday night, we didn't have to go to school the next day. We would lay there in bed and we could talk from room to room even after we had gone to bed. But when the music would start flowing across the valley, you could hear the slow dragging. And you know, and Mama would say, "That's that sinful music. Paul, make the children go to bed. Make the children go to sleep. They shouldn't be listening to this." He said, "Oh, Corey, they gonna hurt them to hear a little slow drag." The creek was sort of a center of our play life. And it was a marker that ran straight through our whole neighborhood. So the creek was here, the bottom of the hill, and then the hill, the creek. These were two interesting passageways. I have a little composition in the studio now of a girl with her baby standing in the creek. She's really standing in this creek. And the road terminates. She's standing really in front of the road in the creek. And the houses are spread apart. I'm going to paint that soon. So, yeah, this creek and this hill, this stays with me all the time. These are two things that have a meaning, great meaning in my life. And that's why I said it both were passageways. And the first picture had the water and the bridge. You know, very first picture that did. And I'm sure the last one will have water in it. But it was a creek that we had to quit using in a general way because the city even turned sewage loose in this creek several times, which destroyed the whole meaning of our neighborhood. And little fishes used to be in this creek. So. Usually by the time we were 4 or 5 or 6, we rode the train somewhere. It might have been a short distance. It might have been down to Belmont, to Clover. You get on this train and go to South Carolina, to Clover. So a lot of people rode the train. It didn't cost but a dime or 15 cents to go to the next town, you see? And cars were scarce. So this had a special meaning. And this is one of the reasons why the tracks are in my pictures. The track, North York Street, and the creek over there, those were 3 things that we were related to, you know? Yeah, we were really related to it. Seen it, it always filled us with wonder. I went to Lincoln Academy to attend school there because by that time Papa had died, Mama had to go to work. So Joe and I were left as the youngsters, and we were put there because there was nobody at home.
John was a fine, quiet, studious young man, very serious for the most part. He was a good student. And I'm not saying that he's one that just stayed to himself all the time, not that. But he didn't waste words. He was always busy doing something. At that time, they had a little work for students, you know, to help pay their board and so forth. And he was one of those students. He worked with us. We did such things as fix the tennis courts, haul rock.
Reverend Henry Curtis McDowell was the president of Lincoln Academy when I was a student here. Oh, he was a marvelous teacher. He had been to Africa for 30 years as a missionary. Notice they've got missionary and educator there. He was one of the few black men that went to Africa as a missionary with any mission group, because that was not a practice. So many of his classes and sermons were always spiced with African wisdom that he had. And I think that this was one of my earliest motivations to understand Africa and know something of my heritage, African heritage. It came from McDowell. But McDowell said to me this spring, it was around March or April, a beautiful warm day like this, and when I came from the boiler room at the dining hall, from the dining hall, he said, "John, come here." And I went over to him, and he said, "Are you planning to go to college? Are you planning to do any future studying?" I said, "Yes, sir. I have applied to go to Tuskegee Institute in Alabama." He said, "What are you going to do there?" He said, I told him, I want to study plumbing. I want to continue to deal with steam and this kind of thing. He said, "Well, you know, may I advise you to go to Hampton?" He said, "It's the same kind of school, but you will come in contact with people at Hampton that you will not come in contact with if you go to Tuskegee." And that turned out to be the case, because I went there to study plumbing, but Victor Lowenfeld was at Hampton. I arrived here in September the 1st, 1941. Even though I came to be a plumber, I had already sent my high school drawings up here to be looked at, but I didn't get a scholarship in drawing, because they were done on the copies. I didn't know what art was, but nevertheless, I sent them, and the counselor who came to Lincoln Academy sent my folder of drawings up here. I had made these copies out of the New York Times book review sections, where they had these beautiful engravings. And I loved those engravings. I had a natural attraction for them. And I'd made these things. And so I was dying to get to the art department. And the first year I couldn't take a class in art. But I immediately went to the art department and asked Victor if I could just come. Very soon, we knew that Victor Lowenfeld was a very serious man. It really came across to us when he carried us into the administration building, and on the second floor was the African Museum. And he went there to show us the meaning of African art. He realized we were a bunch of kids who were products of slavery, of segregation, discrimination. You see, so he was trying to tell us, you have something here that is influencing the whole world. Do you understand? This man is showing us mass that represents an unknown world. That he was showing us sculptures that represented an alien culture. You see, we had no idea what this was. We weren't sure. We were not sure whether the man was honest. You see, because when you're raised up in a society like this, which is better than isolated, you suspect everything. Coming from an environment where none of this had gone on, I was a good product, because if I believed in him, I could be influenced that way. I didn't have to overcome anything. I didn't have anything to overcome. And so I got caught by this man's magic. He said, all of you must understand, if you walk out of the gate, you get on a segregated streetcar. But nobody can segregate what's in your mind. You are free. Nobody can tell you what to think. Nobody can tell you what to express. This is what, see, this is what he wanted us to understand. And I want you to express your feelings about it. That's what's important. You don't want to learn to draw like a European right now. You want to speak out of your hearts. You want to say what you want to say, you see? I say, my goodness, I mean, this is what I'm looking for. That's what all of us really were looking. And this was the success of it, because we all had something to say. Nobody had ever given us a vehicle to express ourselves, truly express how you feel. So this was, it was a philosophy of life, really, he was giving us. And I understood it. And the philosophy was based not upon him, upon your experience. So I naturally went to this and accepted it and learned it. I read his books and I knew them all by heart. And this was my means of teaching. And I took out education for a reason, because I must go teach. I must tell other kids about this. So this was a wonderful thing. So when I came under this influence, I gave up plumbing just like that. I realized I wasn't going to be a plumber. So I took the long road. This attitude of becoming famous or making money, this is a part of our culture. We come up breathing this. I now had to start postponing this. I had to start changing. As much as I wanted a car so bad I could taste it. I wanted nice clothes. I wanted these things. But I wanted to get involved in this other thing. So the more you got involved in this other dream sort of start fading away from you. That wasn't quite as important as you thought it would be. Because it's really important for me to speak about my feelings and what I believe should be. I have something to say to people. I'm not just a follower any longer. You see? So this is the game that started being played, and well, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a part of it. And then after that, the war came. And that was another ball game altogether. But my most direct relationship was when I went to Penn State. Because I was on a black boy in the dormitory I lived in. So this is where my life was forced into whatever you want to, integrated pattern. The other 12 black kids on that campus of 15,000 people, you saw them just every once in a while. So you had to live your life. So this was the first and most intimate contact with white kids was at Penn State. And that was after the war. Yeah, it was terribly long. There was an Indian boy from India. There was a Chinese boy from some part of China. There was a Texas boy. The reason why I remember these people so clearly, we all sat at the same table in the dining hall because none of us were invited to be at the other tables. So we 4 or 5 kids, we sat in a table near the center of the dining hall. And we did this for over 2 years, 3 years. So I wanted the art that I did to be very clear. And that was part of the motivation. For there to be no doubt what I was painting, what it was about. I wanted that to be very clear.
When was the first time I met John? I know it was at Hampton, and I was a friend of his buddies, and I went to the art center, and that's when we met. He was laying on a table asleep, and his friend was named Frank Stewart, and Frank used to use my Mia book, and Frank had a lot of lady friends. And he took my meal book and he gave it to John so they could eat 2 breakfasts, 2 lunches, or 2 dinners. And I guess that was the first time I met him. Ooh, he was kind of overpowering. I guess he was so intense, you know, and I had to get used to that. We would just meet and talk. You know, I'd be in the dining hall, and he would just come, take a seat, and then we'd go for a walk. And it didn't start out as a formal date because he had a girlfriend and I had a boyfriend. We started out just meeting and talking.
He said that he had met this girl when he was at Hampton, and he was going to write to her again and see if he could get in touch with her. He said, because she's really the girl for me. So he did, and he came down, and we got him ready, and he came down to Tallahassee to visit Hazel. And as I said before, you know, clothes were something you didn't think about. It was something that you just put on. You didn't think about trying to match things. So he went to visit her, and he came back looking like $1 million, and he looked so good in clothes. You know, we didn't know how really good he could look.
I think it was while he was at Penn State. We started getting serious. He wanted to get married, and I wasn't quite ready, so 2 years later, we got married.
If it wasn't for Hazel, who happened to be an accountant, Johnny eventually learned, said, now look, I don't know how to handle money. You just give me my spending change, you take care of the rest. So with Hazel handling, you know, the savings account and investments and so forth, I think that made, because Johnny would give you anything you wanted. And he's still that way. You see? And a dollar bill just doesn't mean anything to him.
A couple of pieces of African sculpture which are up here. One represents night and the other day. Hazel is as so many wonderful women are, very nurturing, supportive, understanding kind of person. I shouldn't say kind of person. She's the understanding, supportive, nurturing half of John Biggers, which allows John Biggers to, in his own eccentric way, be the other half of John Biggers, which is paint, draw, collect African pieces. Hey, I mean, that's it.
Going to Texas was just another experience. And we felt like we would go and stay 2 or 3 years and go somewhere else. We didn't know we were going to end up staying 40-some years in Houston.
Suddenly, the flatlands took on another meaning. And as time went on, the row houses, instead of rising over hills and going down, and they set straight. And here you're going to really get the meaning of perspective. You see, these are some of the differences. You see what I mean? And this starts to getting in you. And after all, this is also beautiful. It's a different kind. It's a different way of looking at space and things in space. Do you see? And so these are the adjustments that I started making. And before I knew it, after a few years had passed, I had made the adjustment and didn't realize it. I've always been influenced by students because they're full of new ideas. Youth is full of ideas. In an art school, the problem usually is that they can express it, but it's not necessarily an artwork. You see what I mean? But it is raw expression. So to take or to learn about or relearn about raw experiences from children or young people and then making an artwork of it becomes a real challenge. And at the same time, it goes on all the time because children are this way every day. You know, every day they have something else to say. And no matter how much it sounds like yesterday, it's not like it. It's changed some. So I found this a tremendous inspiration. And I can, well, since I've been retired now about 12 years, just to reflect, to remember, I get ideas. Once a teacher, I don't think you ever stop. You gotta go teach somebody. You know, then you go out in the woods and teach the trees and the birds. You gotta talk to somebody, you know. So it don't end.
To have been in a department when John was teaching and to see him inspire students as he did taught me a lot about being a teacher, you know, and what was the elemental aspect of what it was you wanted to convey to young men and women about creativity. And he did that every day, you know, by example, because he worked in the building. Just in his tone of voice, you know, in his interaction with students, in the way that he looked at the world. And it was a very, very special place to be. You know, to witness that was remarkable.
I don't feel no waste time. I've come too far from where I've started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. I don't feel no way.
When I came out to Omaha, Naples, to begin to teach a class for teachers, in looking for an extension cord and a slide projector in the library, I came upon this mural. I think John worked on it, as I understand it, for maybe 2 years, from the beginning to the time it was actually installed. And it does tell in an incredibly graphic way what the phases of education for the black citizens of this country were from the Civil War to 1953. The rededication ceremony was an absolutely amazing event because it was the first time that the community had met as an integrated group in the context of this mural, and it was the rededication of that mural that brought the community together. John Biggers was absolutely ecstatic because, in his view, a mural is for the people of the community, and it's one thing to achieve a certain amount of recognition within the art community, but when you achieve recognition in the community, the citizens at large, then you know that a mural has done its work.
Then God himself stepped down, and the sun was on his right hand, and the moon was on his left. The stars were clustered about his head, and the earth was under his feet. And God walked, and where he trod, his footsteps hollowed the valleys out and bulged the mountains up. Then he stopped and looked and saw that the earth was hot and barren. So God stepped over to the edge of the world, and he spat out the 7 seas. He batted his eyes, and the lightnings flashed. He clapped his hands, and the thunders rolled. And the waters above the earth came down, cooling waters. When we went to Africa, I went with a purpose. I went with more than one purpose. I went there to find craftsmen, to watch them work, to watch them produce things. And the musicians, I would go every evening to where the musicians played and where the people danced. I wanted to know this. Also the drummers. You know, the drummers who said when we first arrived, 2 Europeans have arrived. We didn't speak the language. We were dressed in Western clothes. We had arrived at the Timi of Edes village. And the Timi of Edes, it means Your Highness. He came forward and shook our hands and welcomed us. He turned from us to the crowd, there was about 100 people there, and he said, drums announced the 2 Europeans that arrived. He said, no, it's one of the rare times the drums made a mistake. These are your brothers who have returned after 400 years. And then finally, the great Durbar that we went to, where a whole people came together, a nation came together to express the meaning of the year's ending and beginning. Because they didn't think of it linear. They thought in terms of it like this. So as it ends, it begins. It's a cycle. And they were in their cycle. They understood that. That was the first time I ever thought about a cycle. It was in Africa. And when the the chiefs and the sub-chiefs came forth under their umbrellas. The umbrellas symbolize astral beings. The 7 planets came forth with the umbrellas twirling. And here they were carrying the chiefs and their wives in palanquins. And these guys would take these above their heads and turn them because this is the Mars and Jupiter, because the end of the year has come. So you must review the heavens, you must review everything, and man must be in harmony with this. Well, this is when I start understanding what African culture was all about.
My father's office was in what is now called Neighborhood Hall. It was in the Science Building. After school, sometimes I would go over and do my homework there, and walking around the corner, I would see Web of Life. And just look at the rabbits, you know, and the water falling, the women walking with baskets on their heads, that wonderful monumental image of motherhood in the center of the painting. And I didn't try to decipher it as a child. It was there, you know, and it was an image that I absorbed over the years.
The painting was accidentally damaged at some point in the past and has sustained a fairly sizable rip, which, as you can see here, is 4 to 5 feet one way and about 2.5 feet. And we're basically using watercolors. With watercolors, any colors put on can be removed fairly easily without any damage to the painting. As a matter of fact, most of the things we're doing with this painting could be reversed. The painting could be reduced to a condition pretty much the way it was when it came in about an hour. That way we don't really intrude on whatever the artist is trying to do.
I took a break from Web of Life to paint this, which was a joy to do. But it's the same kind of composition. Did the same thing with trees and stuff. And so we went out to the farm and I made sketches and then composed it this way. And I think it took about a month painting between times to paint this. But it was a joy to paint. See, I felt like a child because when I was a boy, Grandma had a farm. We went to what we call the country, out of the little town. And, but see, Mama had a cow when I was a kid. And we had 2 pigs. So in the childhood, I had experienced living with animals. We grew chickens and pigeons and, you know, so rabbits. So this was like a return. So it was like something you had put off that you wanted to do. My first contact with Africa, there were many unsolved questions. And it took, from then until now, really to answer some of these questions because they were metaphysical, they dealt with a total philosophy of life that was very different from that which I had been raised in America. However, there were certain concepts and certain ideas that I still had gotten here that was revealed what they were there. These things had remained within the American culture, within the black family. They had maintained certain things almost unconsciously sometimes. And this is the way it was with the shotgun. Now, we call it a shotgun in America because you could see through it just like you could looking down a barrel of a gun. But it also relates to the meaning of a place of fire. Now I'm talking about the birthing fire. And at the roof line of every shotgun is a sacred triangle, which is the fire. And it is supported by a square or a rectangle. These are concepts of sacred geometry that all of the great temples of the world are built with. The shotgun house being a temple and they're usually with air and water holding up the fire. That's the temple. That's why when you walk into your home, this is your truly, not only your castle, but your temple. And then this represented mother. You see, this I couldn't have done. This was just unbelievable, because when you walk into your home, if you are truly comfortable, and that's what a home should be, it not based upon riches, but based upon psychological and spiritual comfort. This is the closest you can get back to the perfect environment, which was your mother's womb. That's what this is. You walk back into her womb each time you walk into your home. This is the story of every temple on earth. You walk back into your mother, back into that atmosphere that was perfect for perfect living.
They're very complete individuals. The women of John Biggers are, of course, they're very strong, very connected to the passage of time. There's an aspect of timelessness to the women in the sense that they become part of the evolution of humankind. At the same time, I feel very personally, some of the images are about being a mother, about the personal, the sense of spiritual joy that comes with creativity, either through motherhood or what it means to know yourself as a woman and the potential of what you can do. I see my own mother and my grandmother, my sister, all of the women that we know in our lives are represented there. And there's that connection with family, which inevitably becomes the human family. And I think that's what makes his work so profound.
Where any woman goes, she carries home with her. A man don't carry no home. She carries the house with her, the family house, the house of all of those who shall come forth. She carries that house. So that's what I'm speaking about here. That's why we call it the upper room. You see, she is a protector because she is the house. She is that which we all are embraced with and by. She's that. A man remains much as a child, no matter how intellectual, no matter what, but he still remains almost as a mother's son. Only unusual things make him a father. But this had been almost a trauma. Before doing this, I went to the hospital. Oh, I went through a whole deal. And this came out of that. And see, I designed this wall, and it was absolutely realistic. And I tore it up. I could do this almost academically. And that's why I never could do the whole thing. And only parts would come out. And then I'd come over here and draw that part only. Now, I didn't know what was coming next. I didn't ever finish any of this. But even now, I don't think it matters. I've got this very personal relationship with murals. A mural, to me, is more than a wall decoration. And it must abide by the laws of architecture and engineering. But it still allows the artist to put his humanity in it. When this job came along, and the very nature of it, having to do with concepts of the earth, the coming forth from the earth, the coming forth from the sky, the celestial, I felt it was ideal with what he had been doing all the time, which was natural for him. And what was natural for me was the earth and coming out of the earth. His things were such of a nature that it suggested the celestial, it suggested insect life, it suggested all aspects of biology and chemistry and mathematics. And this is a part of the universal meaning of the whole cosmic world. So that was what had happened, and that's how I evaluated what he had done. So I thought it was just simply a matter now of two people working consciously to make these things synthesize and come together.
I had some questions, not reservations, but questions in terms of, can this really work? And I think it was with sketches that we put together that answer came. And I think once that happened, I was able to relax enough to say, yes, let's go, let's do it. So he had the eye for it, to put it together. He seemed to know that it would work from the very beginning, and truly it did.
We didn't approach any of this really mechanically. It was approached spiritually. And whatever the celestial meant to him and what his drawings meant, that's the way he would have to paint it to do the color study. You see what I mean? And again, he did his color. See, we worked on the same drawing. But he started working in North Carolina with color. And I was working in Texas with color. He was always descending and I was always ascending. Do you see? The color worked. But you know, the earth as we see it, how different and how much alike is the color from the earth to the sky. You see what I mean? So it was the same. These are natural and normal things that I think can just happen if you allow them to. When you make a sketch, you're dealing with very small, minute things, and in your mind, you're blowing them up in the final picture. But also, the size of things sometimes are so small. You pass over their meaning, the intricate meaning, the meaning that is in that particular object. And suddenly when it's blown up this big on the wall, that becomes something, a form that may take on tremendous meaning suddenly that you didn't have before. And I think that's part of the process of what happens. It can allow you to enhance it, and you can see a whole world all of a sudden. I'm putting in my serpent. I'm putting see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I'm putting in my 14 serpents that are going to be the choir. See, the serpent is the magic. He's the singer.
One thing else.
Yeah.
Do you see that in the sphere of the orange, there's those shadow figures again? They are shot in the big sphere to our left.
Yes, Did you know Moses?
His knees are almost exactly working for his leg.
Yeah, okay. It's perfect now. It is perfect. The first murals I did at Hampton, I came back and did the same composition. And I was unaware. The royal preacher and the dying soldier. See, the dying soldier, one figure in the center, just like the tree trunk. The preacher's the same in the very center. The tree again, or the meaning of the altar with the horns going out, you know? And then all the things that are happening at the top. So interesting. I was a dream dog man. But it was about my high school days. Oh, that's been a long time. But it was just my memory of my dream today is just as clear as if, it's so clear there. It's just amazing. Oh yeah. And then this thing, he got mixed up in it. That's why I got on over here and do it. I said, man, you better go on and do it.
On three, let's go.
All right.
Okay.
All right. All right, so see? Okay.
When he disagrees with you, he has this wonderful capacity to say, what does that mean? Now, he doesn't say you're full of anything. He says, what does that mean? Now, it's your job to really articulate what you meant when you threw out that, whatever that was you threw out. And that is the interesting, introspective kind of thing which John brings to his painting, because I think he looks at his all of these African things which he has collected as his children. He must have 1,000 of them, you know. But anyway, he looks at them, almost every one of them, as though, well, what does this mean? He takes them apart, he turns them around. You know, it's just, well, he does this with everything. I think he does it with us. But he doesn't say, well, look, I'm turning you around, Jack. I want to know what makes you tick. But he's doing it.
I think the thing that really influences people more than his style is his being, his way of talking, his background, his knowledge about things that people causes a curiosity to develop. You want to search out and see what he's talking about. Sometimes when he starts talking, you wonder what the hell this guy talking about. And as he gets into it, you realize that he's gone into things that you haven't heard of before. And sometimes you begin to question, where does he get all this information from? Is he making it up, or is it something he's known about? But then he can go back to sources which are sometimes rather vague or not well known, largely because they haven't been in the mainstream. They haven't been caught up. But then John's done a lot of traveling too, and he's met a lot of people, and he's known a lot of the Africans, and he's gotten into much of the symbolism. John has a tremendous memory, and he memorizes all of these things and gets all of this symbolism and this material together, and when it comes out, it becomes like his paintings. It becomes a mosaic, and it all begins to fit together. And you see the kind of influence that has been on him, and which he transposes on you and for those around him, and his students, and anyone else listening to him for a while. This becomes enthralled in his way of presenting. He's mesmerized. You sit there listening to him.
You know, John Biggers he's a complicated individual, and you have to be able to, there's always that give and take. You know, you have to be ready for that. And he expects you to provide him, you know, with your own answers. So there's always that underlying challenge, you know, that he asks of you. That's fun, you know, but it's challenging. You know, you're engaging with, you know, in the conversation with an incredible mind.
And I started thinking in terms of the cycles of the season. I started thinking of summer, winter, fall, spring. And this was my foundation. This is what he did for me as a teacher, you see. And that began my professional, or at least my apprenticeship, in growing, developing a philosophy of art and life, because he did not separate art from life, from the human condition. He did not isolate art as an end in itself in some enclosed room, but it was spread it out. We were taught to look at it as a broad, panoramic thing, a macrocosm of the universe and the human condition, and especially your own condition, you see, because before you can do or embrace anything else, you must embrace yourself. So he was a very wonderful teacher in that way.
When I see the setting sun, I would see John Biggers. When I see the moon at night, I would see John Biggers. You know, when I would see a bird fly, a serpent, a turtle creeping along, that would be John Biggers, because it's a transformation. See, the energy that is within us have its own way of extending itself, and we can be wherever we need to be and wherever we want to be. So in a physical sense, John Biggers may not be here in a physical sense, but in a moral sense, he will always be here. You know, as long as we live, I think we will be within each other. And that's interwoven through life itself. Looking at the trees, the way the wind blows. See, John talks about the wind. He talks about the fire, the water. And we are a combination of fire and water. You know, we are the wind, the magnetism, you know, the electricity that is within us, the light. So, you know, John is here.
John is the red earth. John is the people who come from that earth. John is the link between those people and whatever the future will be. I think his motivation has been in placing the images of these people before a public, and he's saying, look at this beauty.
He was about down the hill.
I think the key is I'm an individual, and I think he understands that, and he's an individual. And I think it's more or less respecting each other. When he's doing his work, I have to understand and respect that. When I'm doing what I have to do, because I used to have to work all night at times to get my work done, he must respect what I'm doing. And I think that's the key to our marriage, you know. With any weird thing that I want to do, other people might disagree with it, but if that's something I want to do, that's just something I want to do. And I try to look at him the same way. You know? He doesn't care for clothes. I like pretty clothes. He likes to collect art. I like shoes. And I tell you, John, I want you to get an Armani suit. Now, what is that? You know. So we have to just respect our likes and dislikes. I think that's the key.
When we think in terms of structure of life and structure of personalities and people. We have things that we don't expose to all. There are certain things we keep a secret. We will cry with people probably we know quicker than we would with people. We would tell our dearest friend and some things that are so secret, so personal, we can only tell to a very dear friend, you know. So in painting, how can you show these kinds of qualities, that which is private and partly hidden, that which is out there in front, bold, and, you know, and what does that boldness always mean? That may not be the real and great meaning. It may be hidden back here, but you have to look through many layers of things to see and to feel. You know, you don't have to be around the person that you meet. For example, if you fall in love with a person, you know, something reached out and you both embraced. That's hard to explain. You know, that's an attraction. But that's a part, again, of our cosmos, our humanity, what we are. You know, I am because we are. You see what I mean? And because we are, I am. And that's part of the veil that Isis spoke of, that no man can lift, because that's the unknown, that's the mystery, that's what makes life so wonderful, or so terrible. I feel that especially children that are born in the cities, they don't have any relationship with things like this. And this is the source of life. And they've already missed out. When we think in terms of identification, of what we are and who we are, if you don't have these kind of experiences, we already start off with kids are having emptiness, because they can't identify with sidewalks and buildings. That isn't life. That is not life. It may keep us out of the mud, but the mud also is life, you know? I would love to turn this old house right here into a child's museum. I would love to put in here those things from childhood and the paintings that I have made that truly came out of this house. I've got paintings where the fireplaces are shown, where a woman is ironing, where the people are washing clothes. All of those paintings that I did in Virginia or in Pennsylvania or in California or in Texas, of my memories here, I would love to make a little museum out of this and hang those things here and put here the ironing board and Mama's scrub board and the old clock that was on the mantelpiece. Those things would give a living atmosphere for young people, because young people don't know nothing about 20 years ago. You see, we are producing such ignorance in our total society because people don't know what happened. And if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. And I also think that if there were trees here, this yard could become a little park. And this is nothing but a dream.